With most of my stuff here now ready to go, I'm pumping it out into a nice JSON format here. There's really only a couple of things left to do to make this a bit more readable and a bit more user-friendly. To do this, I'm of course going to copy all of this from JSON 3 rather, to a new file which is going to be to JSON 4. Paste that in, and right-click Run just to make sure that we all work. Great. Now, what we are really going to want to do is just try to tidy up a couple of things. Now, handily, this is something that we can avoid. This second querying of the database here is something that we can actually get rid of. Now, when we do this select all from tracker, as well as pulling in all of the data, it actually stores within the cursor a little bit of data here for us, which is within our cursor.description. So for example, if I came to here and said, print c.description, so I should see something above this line and go right-click Run, you'll see that it gives me this sort of weird-looking output here where it gives me within one big tuple this individual item and then this individual item, and you'll see that the first instance, the first item within each of these items is actually the column header that we already have, the thing where we're polling the database for a second time here. So if we could just use each one of those, that would be handy. You can ignore all of these nones that come afterwards. That's just a legacy thing that no one's quite got rid of just yet. We just want to collect the 0th value out of this c.description. So down here, whereas we have this headers, we're going to keep the value the same, but we're going to change this from being I0 for I0 for I in headers. We can just make this for C in description. And if I ditch all of this stuff up here, what I should get is hopefully near enough to the same thing. We'll see if I break it. Yeah, all right. So you'll see that I'm printing my description here, which I can get rid of. So now this is still working because all that I've done is I've just renamed or changed the way that the headers works. If I skip back here, whereas before, so this is in Python 3, JSON 3, apologies, you'll see that I have this bit here where I'm collecting the column header. Well, I don't need to do that polling the database a second time. I can just keep it all within here. So I'm getting my stock details from c.fetchAll, but my headers from c.description, and it still works all nice and neat. You'll also note here that within my output, I've just launched straight into AGL, Goog, etc. What might make more sense is for me to have above this a sort of overarching, key here with all of this stuff stored within it. So what I might do is, if I just format this one correctly, you'll see that what I'm doing here is I'm putting this extra level here, all right, for stocks. And so, you know, I've got AGL, Google, etc., etc., etc. But by having this stocks thing here, it means that if I really wanted to, well, I could have stocks in one hand, I could have equities in another. It would be a better means of wrapping all of this up within one top level of something. So I want this stocks bit to appear right here at the very top. I can also wrap this up with another bit of added functionality, which is where I want to replace this print with an output where I want to send it out to a JSON file. So we'll see if we can combine these. So we're going to go with open, and I want to specify I'm going to send this to stocks.json. I'm just going to close the file up here. Probably wouldn't need to, but we'll see how we go. And I'm going to specify that I might be writing over this, and I'm going to call this file JSON output. And really simple, I've got all the same information that I need as before. Now I'm going to make this JSON dump instead of dumps. Just when you're pushing it out into a file, you need to specify just dump, all right? Where because it's not going into a string, right? Dumps, the S on it is an S for string. The dump is just going sort of one-way output straight out to a file here. And I'm going to specify this going to JSON output. And now when I go right-click Run, what I should get, because I've replaced my my print statement here within stocks.json, you'll see that I get all of this stuff, and if I format it, I get exactly what I had before. So just to see whether or not this actually functions generally, a handy thing that we might do here is, whereas we've got this tracker, I'm going to replace this with MSFT. You might remember that way back I had this extra table here within my database. So let's see what happens now when I go right-click Run. You'll see that I should get here the same sort of thing, right? Whereas it's pulling the second file here, the second column name. So I'm getting, hey, this is a date, open, high, low, and you'll see that that aligns with this over here. Likewise, if I were to come back into here and change this to CSL, I should get the data from that second table, or the third table in this instance as well. So all of this should be really handy for us to be able to pull data out and send it. So all of this content here goes into the same, or uses the same functionality, the same code in order to achieve this result. Let me swap this back here to Tracker for now. The last step was the one that we said before about, rather than us just having all of this in the one top level, we might want to add this this top bit of stocks above it. And we can do that quite handily here within this JSON dump by opening up a squiggle bracket, wrapping that around our stock dict. And we're going to specify a key here, which is going to be stocks and then stock dict. So what this is doing is it's putting it within one final top-level dictionary with the key of stocks and stock dict as our value. So now if I go right-click Run and open up stocks, you'll see that I now have exactly what I wanted with my top-level key here and all of my stocks underneath it, right? All generated here within Python quite handily. Let's say I want to use this in for whatever reason in a within a function might be handy. Let's say I want to turn this into a full table to JSON, and I might take all of this stuff, tab it over, and now what I can do is I can call this. So I might go about saying, let's say that I want to output this or use it some other time. Well, I can say full table to JSON, and I can get this and go right click Run. You'll see that now I'm calling it within this function here, my custom function. So why might you want to do that? Well, let's say you, rather than it just going out to a JSON format, let's say you also want to return it. Well, you can also say return JSON.dump, and we want to take this same thing here, stocks with stock dict, and now I should be able to get that returned to me as well. Make sure I've got this right. Redundant with return, don't need that. Alright, so let's say, oh no, I do need that in this instance because I can do it as dumps instead of dump. Right, so now what I should be able to do is, let's say I want to retrieve this into a my JSON. I can make it equal to this and go right click Run. And a really handy part of this would be that, let's say that this was a Flask instance or some sort of output where I wanted to send something to my user. Well, this would be a really handy means of me to sending a specific bit from my table, from a SQLite table, out to my user in a standard JSON format.